here. You are our second witnesses of the session, and we're just really pleased to have you here to talk about the Vermont State Employees Association. We are just asking people to tell us who they are, what they do, how their work interacts with the committee's jurisdiction, and what your priorities are for the session, what you might like to see us do, or what you really don't want us to do. And we have, unfortunately, only 25 minutes left because I have a meeting at 4.
Yeah, sure.
So just to let you know, and if we have questions, we'll try to hold them off until the end, so give you guys all a chance to. You can just run your show on who you want to come up when.
Okay.
Sound good?
Sure.
Why don't we actually introduce ourselves just since it's the beginning? You want to start, Senator Norris?
Bob Norris, Franklin County.
I think I know everybody. But...
Okay, well, just make sure. You want to be good in here.
Senator Ann Watson from Washington District.
That's who you are.
Yeah. Wait.
See,
Your mayor.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Warmer.
Allison Clarkson, Windsor District.
Heard a lot about it.
Heard a lot about you too.
Ruth Hardy, Addison District.
Sonia Vyhovsky, Chittenden Central.
Oh, wait. Oh,
Oh, yeah.
that's okay.
Rebecca White, Windsor.
Okay,
Nice to see you again.
take it away.
I am Steve Howard. I'm the executive director of the Vermont State Employees Association. I'm here with our legislative coordinator, Tom Abdelnour, and our lobbyist, Vince Saluzzi. We also in the building have Adam Norton, who's our strategic analyst, and he spends most of his time in the appropriations committee watching that process. The VSEA represents just about 6,000 Vermonters and a few folks who live over the border, but we represent the executive branch. We represent the clerical and technical workers on the state college campuses. Our newest bargaining unit are the deputy state transport deputies. It's about 24, I think, 22 maybe positions in that unit. Office of State's Attorneys, Defender General, Housing Authority, the Judiciary is also, the employees of the Judiciary are also in the VSEA. So I think I'll start with just what our priorities are this year and what we're concerned about. The elephant in the room, I think you've all heard of it. We are opposed to forcing our retired state employees into Medicare Advantage. We are opposed to it because we support collective bargaining, and we trust our bargaining team members, who are Vermonters, who are chosen by the active members, more than we do insurance executives. We do not believe that Cigna in particular has a good reputation. We don't believe that many of the products that are offered by the insurance industry offer the same kind of flexibility that a collectively bargained benefit does. And fundamentally, we believe that, you heard this last year in the pension discussion, and you'll hear during this discussion, we believe that when you make a commitment to someone who gives 30 years of their life to state service, you keep your word. And so that's a big part of our argument, in addition to the fact that we support Medicare and Medicare Advantage programs are bankrupting the Medicare Trust Fund. They're actually costing the taxpayers more money. They're supposed to be cost neutral. And there's a great deal of denial of services to seniors as they get older. That's really information that comes from the Biden administration's review of Medicare Advantage programs. And there's a lot of what's called upcharting going on, where Medicare Advantage, where the insurance industry is basically saying to Medicare, the folks that they are covering are sicker than they really are in order to draw down more money. We don't want to be involved in that. And we understand that the administration is going to say it saves $15 million, and you can spend it on child care, you can spend it here, you can spend it there. We understand that that is a tempting proposal for the legislature and for the administration. But we also believe that there are some things that are more important than money, and we believe the values behind the insurance plan that people are in really matter. Understaffing, I'm sorry.
We're gonna hold off unless it's really urgent.
Yeah, I mean, we're all getting emails about this and it's frustrating because I don't think we're in the business of choosing the benefit plan. I mean, we did the work of the pension work, but the benefits plans with the teachers and with you are that's your work is choosing which benefit plan.
Well, this is governed by CELRA, so they would have to change the law in order to do this.
And we may be digging into this a little bit more deeply at
Yeah, we're
another
gonna have
time. Yeah, I mean, this is on my radar.
Okay, so you know about that issue?
We've talked several times, and I've talked with legislative counsel and the chair next door, and so we will get into this a little bit more. So thank you. It's definitely on my list.
That's the big one. Chronic understaffing in state government is pervasive throughout state government. The most alarming areas, the PSAPs, the public service answering points, for the dispatch centers where you call 911. They had very recently a 48% vacancy rate. Part of that is because the politicians in charge at the time didn't listen to the VSEA when we said, don't close the PSAP in Derby, don't close the PSAP in Rutland. You're going to have a hard time finding employees in Chittenden County, and the Shumlin administration ignored us. So we're here we're here because of that. So that's a very serious understaffing issue. We have a 32% vacancy rate in our 2 healthcare facilities, millions of dollars in the governor's proposal for budget adjustment to pay for traveling nurses. That is a serious problem that needs to be addressed. And then we have really serious continuous chronic understaffing in the Department of Corrections. Very almost inhumane working conditions, 16-hour shifts, day after day after day. We're making some progress in the 2 smaller facilities. The larger facilities are still having massive amounts of overtime. Correctional officers aren't seeing their families. Their spouses are threatening to leave them. It's just really a very bad situation. And it's also spilled into our field offices, particularly in the South. Where because of Springfield and the infirmary in Springfield and the facility where more elderly offenders go, there is more hospital coverage that's required. So because of the shortage in the facilities for correctional officers, they're now taking probation and parole officers off the street and really saying to them, you have to go cover these hospitals and show up in court the next day and be back at work at 8 o'clock and do your regular job. So you really can't do that to the extent you want. I mean, you do the best you can, but it's having a major effect. They're on constant what's called standby status. So when they do have a day off, they can't leave their house. They can only go an hour away from their house. So the basketball game is an hour and 10 minutes away. They can't go to their kids' basketball games. It's been going on for years. We've asked the governor to meet with our correctional officers. We haven't received a response. And when I say we, I mean the correctional officers wrote him a letter, their governor, not even an acknowledgement that he received the letter. Commissioner put out a plan last week that said we're going to create a plan, and I'll have a committee to do that. To figure out how we're going to end this disaster in the probation and parole offices. Our members are exhausted, they're tired, and they really are fed up. So we're going to be talking about that this year. Understaffing is a big issue. Safety and security in state buildings. We believe that state employees who are enforcing the laws that you pass here should have the same level of safety and security that you have here. And certainly the level of threat has not gone down, whether it's our election workers in the Secretary of State's office, Agency of Natural Resources, just trying to do their job out on the lands, Agency of Agriculture, workers have been threatened. And there's probably no place where it's more pervasive than, sadly, in the Department of Children and Families. It's sad because we've had 1 murder and 1 sexual assault and no plan from the administration. The closure of Woodside whatever happened there, there was no plan to create an alternative. There was no plan, there was no alternative ready to go. So we now are in a position where we're asking family service workers to provide security at police stations with our youth. They were, for a time, chained chairs overnight. That was a more therapeutic environment than what was once an award-winning facility in Essex. It's a very sad situation. There are no beds for kids. There are no beds for justice-involved youth. And the people, the staff who are paying the price are these family service workers. And I'm sad to say that, unfortunately, I get call after call from very frightened workers who say to me, I'm being asked to go do something that I know is dangerous, that I think could end my life or could end up in serious bodily injury. And I'm being told by the management that I'm not a good social worker if I don't do it. That's wrong. These people deserve a plan from this administration. They closed Woodside. They made that decision. These men and women should not be put in this position. These are caseworkers. They're not security staff. And they're being asked to perform security staff functions, which is very sad. So I hope we'll talk about that because that is a serious problem. All of the understaffing leads to a breakdown of the ability of our members to deliver for your constituents. And it leads to an argument from the administration that we should privatize those services. We're probably going to see it in the Department of Labor. The Department of Labor's management is not well supported by the workers. The function of the infrastructure there is outdated and inferior. That's not the workers' decision, that's the management's decision. And you're going to see, I think, the Department of Labor, I think you're going to see the PSAPs, you're going to see all across state government an argument from the
Can I
administration.
interrupt you for a second?
Sure.
PSAPs, can you, what?
Public safety answering points.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
So that's, if you look at the pattern of privatization, that's how they do it. They starve the agency, they try to kill the agency, they make the agency dysfunctional, and then they say, well, it's so bad we have to privatize. And that's what we think we're going to see in the next 2 years across state government. So we have a proposal to change that. Right now, there's no accountability for a private contractor who comes in and says they're going to save the state a boatload of money. No one's checking to see after year 1 and 2 if they really are doing that. The only way right now you can save money on privatization contracts is if you take it out of the pay and benefits of the workers for the private contractors. We want to prevent that because we don't think the taxpayers of Vermont want you to save money for them by abusing workers in the private sector and costing state employees their jobs. And we really want to make sure that that there's an enforcement mechanism, that when a private contractor says they're going to save a certain amount of money, that they actually do, and that they pay the staff that they ask to do this work. If they have some brilliant idea how to do this work better than state government, that they pay their workers the same as state workers would be paid. So that's going to be an interesting proposal. We do have a proposal on safety and security. I meant to mention that before. That is an attempt to provide well-trained, consistent security staff throughout all state buildings and courthouses that are under the control of the state government and trained to the standard of the leaders of state government. And including in that some provision for working with clients of state government, particularly in the Agency of Human Services. We are proposing that there be some orderly process brought to the security of state workers across state government. We have a proposal on that.
Did you bring with you any your proposals in writing or anything or testimony?
We did not, but we just brought a very simple outline of of our priorities. We didn't want to go too deep into it.
Did you send that to
Yeah.
you? Okay.
Yeah, Olivia has that.
Great, excellent.
Yeah.
If you have any of your proposals written up, if you could send them to me and Olivia and the committee.
We'll definitely do that.
That is a question for Olivia. Would you be kind enough to check and make sure that, because they should be able to send it to Senate Gov Ops for all of us, and it should be on the website. You know, is it
Yes, it is on
updated?
our committee page.
Okay,
And I would say that
Check about
because the
Senate Gov
email
Ops list.
sends, it would be great to make sure that's updated, because it's not updated with some other groups.
lastly, I would say that we will have a retirement bill to do a few things. One is we believe that the anti-spiking law, which prevents practice of driving up your benefit by working a certain amount of hours in the last few years of your service, but the anti-spiking law that has a cap on how much credit you get for the hours you work, overtime hours you work, that the mandatory overtime that you were forced to work by the management should not be included in that cap. You were forced to work hours you didn't want to work. You didn't volunteer for that work. You were told you had to do it. We don't think you should be punished when you retire. So that's going to be a provision that we'll propose. We believe that Group G needs to be more like Group C. So that, and this is all gobbledygook for a lot of folks, but basically we think that when you work for the Department of Corrections and in other very traumatic, difficult agencies, particularly corrections, which applies to Group G and in the mental health facility in Berlin, under Group G, you have to work 20 years and be age 55 in order to retire with full retirement. We believe that you should be able to work 20 years in that job and get a full retirement. Because that job comes with a lot of physical demands and a lot of trauma. And we think 20 years is a lot, more than 20 years is a lot to ask of people in those positions. And we also think the contribution rate for Group G needs to be equal to what the state police have. There's no difference between what we're asking the state police and what we're asking these folks. We'd also like to expand it beyond corrections and mental health to include family service workers, to include the folks who are taking the 911 calls and have to stay on the phone during these crises, keep people calm, and direct services. We think that's also a job that has serious trauma. There's not a lot of difference in the experience our members have at the psychiatric care hospital, between the psychiatric care hospital and the Vermont Veterans Home. We have a very high level of mental and behavioral health issues at the Vermont Veterans Home as well. And very similar nursing positions that are physically demanding. So we want to expand Group G on that front. We have a number of employees, it's hard to believe because we're so desperate for staff in corrections and all throughout state government, but we have a number of employees who came to state service and worked as temps and now have then had a career as a full-time state employee, classified state employee. We would like to have those employees be credited with the time they worked as temps when they were doing essentially the same work that they're doing as classified employees, but just in a different status. So we have a number of issues around retirement that we'd also like to bring. Pensions are just issues that we it never goes away. It just keeps going and going. Darn. Yeah. So those are my.
We began work on that last year.
Yes, you did actually. Yes, we did. So there'll be a number of those issues that will come to the fold.
Senator Behouse.
Okay. Thank you for being here, Executive Director Howard. Can you remind me, is Group G the group we created?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So
Yeah.
now I can wrap my head around everything within Group G, but that is the one we created last year.
Yes, and we were very happy to see that be created. It was a multi-year effort to get that on the books. But VSCA really viewed it and talked with our members about it as just the beginning. So the first decade it took us to get it into the law. It's going to take us probably another decade to get it to where we want it to be, but we'll keep coming back and saying, we'll improve it, we'll improve it, we'll improve it. We're at least going to try to do that.
Person.
So how the corrections officers have had a whole new 12-hour shift work introduced in the last 6 months. How is that working out? Is that beginning to solve some of the problems?
Mhm.
And it would be great to have an update on that.
It's working in the small facilities. So if you go to the Chittenden Women's Facility, it seems to be working better there. It also is working a little bit better at St. Johnsbury. There is some debate about that in those facilities, but it's a little bit better there. The staffing seems to be a little better there. Incidentally, the management also seems to be better there. So that's one factor that
Key.
is key. Yeah, in the larger facilities, we still have people working 16-hour shifts. We did have quite a large academy, 51 people come into the last academy. And the problem for corrections, which is an issue for government operations, is they can't keep staff. So we train them, we drop 10 grand to train them. We put them through the academy in the last 2 weeks, the last 6 weeks. So they last 2 years. 2 years is the point at which they leave. So we've got to really get at retention because we're spending a lot of the taxpayers' funds on training, and we're losing those people.
So what do the surveys say about why are they leaving after 2 years?
Pay is an issue. Benefits, I don't think are really. There was a big concern around retirement in the last session that caused a lot of people to leave, but pay is an issue. But I'll tell you what I hear mostly, and what you'll see in the UVM research that's been done, particularly in Southern State, is the management culture. Management is viewed as distant and that they lack the understanding of what's happening in the facilities, and they don't consult the folks on the front lines. So, we've been calling for quite some time for a Downs-Racklin-Martin report on the management culture of the Department of Corrections. And we haven't been successful, but we keep trying, because that is what our members tell us. It's both central office, which they see as a separate entity from the entire field and facilities. And then it's also the management sometimes in some of the facilities. So it's a very complicated, it feels like when you're talking about the culture of corrections, I've been here 10 years in the SEA, kind of like Survivor. Everybody's trying to just survive. And at some point you feel like you can't do that anymore. Particularly when you're working 16-hour shifts, you can't get out of that building. You can't get out of there. If you look at the research, correctional officers have PTSD rates that are higher than returning veterans from Iraq and Afghanistan. They are more likely to suffer from alcoholism and from substance use disorder. They are more likely to become obese and have bad health because of the stress of the position. And I was reading this research about it, and it's interesting. When you go into an environment like a correctional facility, your adrenaline shoots up. And that adrenaline remains for the entire shift that you're there. You're not just there for 8 hours, you can be there for 12, for 16. And then when you leave there exhausted, it takes more time for your adrenaline to come down. And that has a physical impact on people. So we're killing our correctional officers with what we're asking them to do. I mean, and you hear it from them and you talk to them.
Okay, I'm gonna stop you there on that extremely depressing note.
Yeah, sorry.
Do you want to just introduce your two colleagues, because we're pretty much out of time. I know we'll have you guys back in, so and we can go into more depth on other issues, or issues that come up. So yeah.
I'll just introduce myself. I'm Vincent Lucy. I used to serve here many years ago. I know most of you. Congratulations, Mayor Watson. I don't know whether to call you mayor or senator, sheriff or senator. When George Aiken was a US senator, he wanted to be called governor. So, and Lola Aiken used to haunt the halls with us back in my earlier days. I only work part-time with the SEA. Like for example, right now I'm reviewing medical records for a juvenile chins hearing where the mother was heavily addicted, and we're having a hearing tomorrow to keep custody of the child. So I'm only here part-time. but I enjoy the process, enjoy working with Steve and Tom and Adam, and enjoy working with you folks, and look forward to the opportunity to provide you information so you can make the best possible decision on the issues of the day. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, my name is Tom Ablenor. I'm VSCA's legislative coordinator, and I'll try to be succinct in the interest of time. As Senator Clarkson knows, Senate Government Operations is a home away from home for me. I'll be spending many a long afternoon with you all, and look forward to continuing the conversations we started today. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you guys for coming in. We are going to continue to have witnesses via Zoom, and we'll obviously be live streaming because we are going to try to keep the numbers in the room smaller. But we will certainly have you back. I know there'll be a number of bills you're interested in, and thank you so much for your time today. Yeah.
And I'll just say for Senator Clarkson's benefit that I meant to start my testimony, as I traditionally have, by saying, it's so great to be in my favorite committee.
I was gonna say, we are missing something.
Take care, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, everybody. Thanks for a great first day.